In the last episode, we told the story of a man who invented modern radio 3 times: the regenerative circuit, the superheterodyne receiver, wideband FM. By 1941, Edwin Armstrong was a Columbia professor, a major RCA shareholder, and the inventor of the technology that was replacing AM radio. Nearly 400,000 FM receivers had been sold. GE and Zenith were paying royalties. He was at the top of the world. This is the story of what happened next. Before World War II, FM radio was gaining real traction, with nearly 400,000 receivers sold by the end of 1941. Armstrong's station, W2XMN in Alpine, New Jersey, was broadcasting at 40 kilowatts, heard 100 miles away. The future looked bright. Then the war came. FM receiver production halted. Manufacturing capacity went to the military. Armstrong himself went to Camp Evans, New Jersey, where he conducted FM radar research for the war effort. His equipment would later be modified for Project Diana, the experiment that bounced radar off the moon in January 10, 1946. Armstrong's FM technology touched the moon. But while Armstrong was serving his country, something was happening in Washington that would destroy everything he'd built. On June 27, 1945, the FCC reallocated the FM radio band. They moved it from 42 to 50 megahertz, where nearly 400,000 receivers had already been sold, up to 88 to 108 megahertz. The stated reason was avoiding interference. The move was championed by RCA and NBC, the same companies Armstrong was in conflict with over FM patents. Armstrong fought it. He argued that the equipment already sold to the public would be worthless. He argued that the old band didn't need to be moved. Part of it was reassigned to TV Channel 1, which was later deleted anyway because of the very propagation problems the FCC claimed to be solving. He argued that AT&T supported the move because eliminating FM relay stations would force broadcasters to lease wired connections from AT&T instead. None of it mattered. The FCC decreed the change. Dual-band operation was allowed temporarily, but on January 8, 1949, at midnight, the old frequencies were shut down. The nearly 400,000 FM receivers that families had bought, receivers that worked, that played music without static, that Armstrong had spent years building a market for, went silent. Obsolete overnight. Armstrong believed the frequency change was designed to make his patents worthless. Whether that's true or whether it was genuine spectrum management is a question historians still argue about. But the effect was undeniable. The band shift set FM back a decade, and it crippled Armstrong's early station network at exactly the moment it was gaining traction. In 1948, Armstrong filed a lawsuit against RCA and NBC for patent infringement. He alleged that they had deliberately set out to oppose and impair the value of his invention. He sought treble damages. RCA responded by developing its own competing FM system and encouraging other manufacturers to stop paying Armstrong royalties. The litigation consumed his life. A friend estimated that by the end, 90% of Armstrong's time was spent on lawsuits, not engineering. And in late 1950, his primary FM patents expired, weakening his legal position even as the cases dragged on. He was running out of money, running out of patents, and running out of time. On November 1st, 1953, Armstrong told his wife Marion that he had nearly exhausted his financial resources. He asked her to release retirement funds held in her name to continue the lawsuit. She declined. She suggested he settle. Armstrong, in a rage, struck her with the fireplace poker. Marion left to stay with her sister. She never saw him again. The next 3 months were the worst of his life. He fell into a deep depression. He regretted what he'd done to Marion and could not forgive himself. The stress of the litigation had taken a documented toll on his mental health. He had come to believe someone was poisoning his food and had insisted on having his stomach pumped. Marion herself had spent time in a mental hospital after attempting to throw herself into the East River. The marriage, the money, the lawsuits, the health, everything was collapsing at once. Sometime during the night of January 31st to February 1st, 1954, Edwin Armstrong died by suicide. He jumped from a window of his 13th floor apartment at River House in Manhattan. He was 63 years old. He left a 2-page note to Marion. It expressed his heartbreak at being unable to see her again. It expressed his deep regret at having hurt her. And it ended with these words: "God keep you, and Lord have mercy on my soul." The note was filled with grief and regret. Not rage at RCA, not anger at Sarnoff, not fury at the FCC. It was a man who could not forgive himself for what he'd done to the person he loved. After Armstrong's death, David Sarnoff told an engineer named Carl Dreyer directly, "I did not kill Armstrong." And the historical record supports a more complicated truth. This wasn't a single villain story. It was a collision between an independent inventor who owned his patents and a vertically integrated industry that wanted his technology on its own terms. It was a regulator that reallocated spectrum against his objections. It was a man who refused to settle, refused to compromise, and refused to give up, even when giving up might have saved him. But the story didn't end on the 13th floor. Marion Armstrong took up the fight. After Edwin's death, she took charge of his estate's legal cases. In December 1954, less than a year after his death, through arbitration, she secured a settlement of approximately $1 million from RCA. She didn't stop there. Through 1967, Marion won a series of successful infringement suits against multiple companies. Those judgments formally established Edwin Armstrong as the inventor of FM. The man who had been told by the Supreme Court that his first invention wasn't his, who had been told by RCA to pack up his FM equipment, who had been told by the FCC that his frequencies were moving. His wife proved in court what the engineering community had always known. The vindication was slow. FM didn't surpass AM in the United States audience share until the late 1970s, more than 20 years after Armstrong's death. But it did. By the end of the 20th century, FM's audience share was triple AM's. Armstrong's FM system carried the communication between NASA and the Apollo astronauts. The superheterodyne circuit he designed in a Paris war lab in 1918 is still the standard receiver circuit in the world. Philosophy Hall at Columbia, where he invented FM in a basement, is a national historic landmark. Edwin Armstrong was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 1980. The U.S. Postal Service issued a stamp in his honor in 1983. But the truest memorial is this. Every time you turn on a radio and hear music without static, you're hearing Edwin Armstrong. He couldn't forgive himself, but his wife did, and she defended his name and his legacy until the world caught on. If you like forgotten radio history stories, subscribe. The next story is out of this world. And if you've watched both parts of the story, leave a comment. Did Armstrong's refusal of $1 million make him the hero, or was it a mistake that killed him?